Okay, hi everyone. Okay, so this is going to be the final demonstration for our class, our basic cake decorating class, and this is um, the final cake project. Okay, so an 8-inch, and we have a 6-inch here. So I'm going to go over adding a border on each cake, and then stacking, actually doweling our cakes and then stacking and then decorating with our flowers that we have done. So, okay, so I have here my fondant cake on a drum board, which you have in your kit. And it's been sitting for, I don't know, about maybe an hour, so it's not as sticky as it was earlier. So I used this Wilton mold that I had used previously in the other demo, and I just used the bottom mold here for the border. And I'm just going to put this border on both of these cakes here. And since it's not as sticky on the bottom, I'm just going to add some water. Now, if you don't want to add water, you got to make sure that that water is actually getting on there. You can add a little bit of piping gel, not too much because you don't want to get it too ooey and gooey, and that can easily happen. So I have here just a little container of piping gel. It's Wilton. You can get it at Walmart, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, any craft store. I just bought this on Amazon. It was like $3 or so. So it's 10 ounces of piping gel, and I just use it for adhering things, and this actually goes a long way. Okay, so I have here my border, and what I did is I just put it in one of the plastic bags that you have that you use for your flowers. So I'm just going to go around and just make sure this is nice and tidy. And the reason why I put these in the bag in the first place is because they are made out of gum paste, and I don't want them to necessarily dry out too much. Otherwise they could get crusty and really not want to bend as well to your cake, especially with gum paste. Gum paste always dries faster than regular fondant, and regular fondant, unless you want it to dry faster, you could always add some Tylose powder to that to get that to dry a little bit faster. But in this case, I'm just using some gum paste. So now here I have this big gap here, and what I want to do, and this is going to be my back as well, I want to make sure that any sort of seams are in the back, and I'm just going to cut with this little knife that I have. This is just a paring knife, and I'm just going to just pop that in there. So, and of course this can be a lot cleaner, where I could make sure that the seams are met up, but for demo purposes, I'm just showing you what can be done. Okay, so I've got that going, and now what I want to do is I want to add my straws for doweling. So you can use bubble tea straws, you can use regular plastic straws, You can use the big giant Wilton straws that you can buy on Amazon or different cake supply places. You can also use wooden dowels if you'd like. These are just much easier. I got these from Walmart, and these are cardboard. So, but believe it or not, straws are very sturdy. You want to make sure that you put enough in them in your cake. But that being said, straws are extremely sturdy. A lot of people use them. So, okay, so I'm going to start off with 3. Okay, so I have here a 6-inch board, and this is going to be my guide as to where to insert my straws, because I want to make sure that this cake is centered on the 8-inch. So what I'm going to do is just eyeball it and just make sure that it looks fairly centered. And then I'm just going to lightly just take my little tool here and make a guide. And this also helps as to where it's going to stick to. Okay, I'm not too worried about it sticking because it's going to be underneath the second cake. But the reason why I do make a guide is this is going to help me to figure out where I want to place my cake, exactly where it is and that it's centered. All right. So then before I insert my first straw, is I kind of want to figure out where the highest point is. And basically what that means is you're going to base your first straw, your first size, on the highest point of your cake. And from there on, you're going to be basing all your other straws on that first straw. So let's go over what I mean by that. So I'm going to insert my first straw, and I want to make sure that it's going in center, going actually in straight, because if you have crooked straws, it's like a house. If you have crooked 2x4s, you're going to have a crooked house. So if you insert your first straw crooked, then it's very possible your cake is going to be crooked. It's having a hard time going in. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I think that went in pretty good. All right. So then I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to mark exactly where the cake starts on the straw. And I'm going to bring it back up. And so I have my mark. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'm going to take my pencil, or I'm sorry, my scissors, and I'm going to base all my other straws on this first straw. So what I'm doing here is I'm just marking all these other straws before I insert them into the cake. And this will then hold up your second tier. And even if your cake is a little bit crooked on one side, it's always going to be based on the highest end. And that's going to be kind of like almost like stilts holding your cake straight. So I'm going to insert 4 straws into this cake. Okay, so I'm going to put my first straw back in. Okay, so I want to make sure that my other 3 straws are going in straight as well. So I'm going to put 1 across from the first and then 2 on the side. Remember, you want them within your 6-inch board, all right? Not at just outside, because you want to make sure that you don't see those holes, that you don't see those insertion points. So I'm doing it within that 6-inch. So I'm just going to being a little stubborn. Okay. I'm just eyeballing it, making sure, just going around, making sure that it's not going in crooked. Okay, let me see if this works just a little bit. Yes. Oops. Okay, is it going around? There we go. There we go. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I've got my straws in there. And then before I put on my second tier, I'm just going to put a little bit of buttercream to act as a glue between the 2 layers. I just want a little bit of buttercream. I'm not going to spread it all around. I just want a little dab. All right, so now I'm going to lift up my 6-inch and I want to make sure I get under there. So I'm holding my 6-inch with one hand and my offset. And I want to kind of eyeball it and make sure that I plop it, there we go, on where that guide is. And I'm going to just gently pull that away. So as you can see, it peeled up just a little bit. I'm not going to worry about that because that does happen. I'm just going to flatten that back just with my finger. Okay, so it is a little offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my hand and just gently see if it is where it needs to be. And I think it's nice and centered. Okay, so then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add on the border for this cake. And it's basically the same border, but I want to hide that gap that is showing. Okay, so, and this cake is pretty sticky. So what I'm gonna do is, as you remember, we have a back and we have a front. And I'm gonna start with the front, with this border. Okay. Okay, so here's the front, and I made sure that it's really flush against the top tier, or I'm sorry, the top of the bottom tier. Okay, so you're not seeing any gaps or anything like that, as far as I can tell. And then I'm just gonna go and continue to add this border here. You always want to make sure that you add your border before you add any sort of flowers. The reason being is that if you have flowers here or on top, they're going to get in the way of actually adding a border, and you might have to do some cutting or just maneuvering around, and it would be just more of a pain to do it than just doing your decorating, whatever you have, piping or anything like that, and then adding your border, and then adding your flowers. Okay. All right, so we have here our border. Okay, and so we have our back, which is facing me right now. Okay, so onto our flowers. Okay, so I do have, I have a wire cutter, which you'll need. And then I have a pliers that can help to actually insert your flowers into your cake. So I have here about, I think, 10 leaves or so. And I have 3 carnations, and I have 4 roses, right? And then I have about 12 or 15 hydrangea. So what I want to do is I want to have a cluster of flowers here on the top of my top tier, and then I want to have a cluster right on the corner here of the bottom tier where this corner is, or ledge, all right? So when you start with working with flowers, you want to have diagonals rather than straight lines. So I would never have something right here and then right here. It doesn't really add anything to the eye, and we're always attracted to things that are more of a diagonal. So I wouldn't have something here and something there. And when, like, say if you see a design of a cascade of flowers, it's always at a diagonal rather than straight down. So they will always start from here and then go into a curve. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a rose. And one thing that I unfortunately didn't do was I didn't give you some floral wire. So you can either add some leaves to your roses if you'd like, or not. That's optional. So I'm going to add a rose leaf to my rose, and I'm just going to tighten that floral wire. And when you're working with floral wire or floral tape, you actually want to be pretty tight with it. You don't want it to be loose. Okay, so I'm going to insert my cake, or I'm sorry, my first rose kind of on the corner here. So it's kind of sitting a little bit down. And what I want to do is I want to build an arrangement around this rose. So you kind of want to build, if you start with, say, like a large peony or something like that, you want to start building around that and make that flower kind of like the center, kind of center stage it. Okay, so I'm going to take this, and don't worry if there's, there could be breakage while you're working with things. This is actually pretty normal. That's just kind of like how this material works. And I'm just going to go really tight and just take that all the way down the wire. And then I'm going to do a diagonal. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to insert the other rose. Oops. There we go. Okay. So then I'm going to add a carnation. I'm going to put that right next to the rose. And so like I was saying before, adding your border before you add your flowers. So if I were to add my border after I added the flowers, I would only be able to take that border to a certain way, to a certain extent. And it's better just to have it done beforehand. Okay, so I'm gonna add some hydrangea. And you also want to design in odd numbers. So I'm gathering either, I would be gathering either 3 or 5 blossoms. And maybe I'll add a leaf to it. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit of floral tape. And then I'm just going to bend that. Maybe I'll put it up here. Okay, so that's sticking up. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to just gently insert that. And this is where your pliers can come into play. I'm just gonna just gently try to get that in there. Okay. And that's when you can actually, it's a bit sticky too. Oh. And then also, as you can see, I just noticed this, is, okay, so what happens when that happens? You take it out, you insert it back in. And then that hole is just a tiny itty bitty thing. And there you go. I just pasted that back with my finger, okay? All right, so what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna start adding some leaves. And what I want to hide basically are, if you look at the back, you can see all the insertion points. If you look at the front, they're rather hidden, okay? So because, say, this cake would be seen from all angles, I want to make sure that the insertion points are hidden. And those can be hidden by blossoms and leaves and other flowers. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take a couple of leaves those together with some floral tape. I'm just going to insert them in, but I'm going to arrange them once I get it onto the cake. So first I just want to insert and then arrange Okay, so in the back, it's pretty well hidden. If I feel that it needs a little bit more fullness, I can just add a few blossoms here and there, just as filler. And I'm just sticking that in there. Okay, so if you see in the back here, insertion points aren't necessarily a problem, and not necessarily a problem on here, but I still want to kind of give it a little bit more fullness. So I'm going to add a few more leaves here and there. Okay, so I'm just gonna stick those in with my pliers. Okay, so I'm seeing the insertion point from here, and what I'll do is I'm just going to take another blossom and just stick that in there, and maybe two more. Okay, so so as you can see, because of the stickiness, and it has made a few marks there. So what you can do, if that should happen to you, is make sure that your cake becomes a little bit less sticky and it hardens up a bit. And then what you can do is you can take a little bit of alcohol, not rubbing alcohol, but just like vodka or something, and take a Q-tip and just get rid of that petal dust that has come on to the cake from the hydrangea. So, and that sometimes does happen because this is hard and your fondant is soft right now. So, those are just one of the things about cake decorating you just have to keep in mind. So I'm not going to worry about it too much, but that's something that you can do, is that alcohol will take any sort of color or metallic dust or anything off. So all right, so this is what we have, and I think this looks really great. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave some questions at the bottom. So thanks for watching. Bye.